Today we're diving into something pretty unique, a city builder set in the Aztec Empire. It's called Tlatoani, Aztec Cities. Usually, we don't see games like this. Most city builders are set in ancient Europe or Asia or the modern day, but Tlatoani shifts the focus to pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. And honestly, I'm thrilled about that, because these cultures were fascinating and had their own histories of innovation, architecture, and meticulously planned cities. Tlatoani is visually stunning. It has this hand-drawn art style that really feels like a tribute to the culture it aims to simulate. Every little detail, from the marketplaces to the temples, is designed to pull you right into the Aztec world. Another way they aim to immerse you is by using traditional Aztec names for many of the buildings in the game. And I mention this because I'm probably going to butcher a bunch of those names, so feel free to correct me in the comments. Gently, please. As the Tlatoani, or the leader of our city, will manage resources, trade, and the well-being of our citizens while aiming to keep the gods appeased. This game isn't just about building and expanding. Tlatoani adds a layer of complexity with challenges like natural disasters, my favorite, and the dynamics of Aztec society, giving us a deep dive into the strategic and cultural demands of ancient city leadership. So, if you've ever wanted to step into the shoes of a leader of a historical civilization as rich as the Aztec Empire, or you're simply looking for a city builder that breaks away from the norm, stick around as we dive into the game. But before we do that, I want to give a huge shout out to the developers, Perspective Games and Bellwood Studios, as well as the publisher, Paradox Arc, for sponsoring the video. Tlatoani is entering early access today, so if after watching the video you want to check the game out for yourself, click on the tracking link in the pinned comment below so that they know that I sent you. Now, without any further ado, let's jump right in. And here we are in Tlatoani, and there's a couple of different ways that you can play this game. You can play through a historical campaign, and they're a ton of fun. You can play through a tutorial or a scenario, or you can generate your own map. Now, if you're playing the game for the very first time, I highly recommend playing through either a historical campaign or through a tutorial. But since I've already done that, I'm going to just generate a map myself. But those two game modes will walk you through the game's mechanics, which is why I recommend that you start there. But the map generator is where I think the game gets a lot of replayability, because you have the ability to basically customize everything about your map, which is a ton of fun. Now, one of the things I didn't realize the first time I generated a map is that your city name is dependent upon your climate. So they're tying the real world city locations to their climates. So if you choose tropical, for instance, you're going to notice that your city names change. So I'm going to go with Basin because I want something that has a little bit more water. And I think we'll go with Texcoco. Now I can change the city size if I want to. I can have a tiny map, huge, or usual. We'll just stick to the defaults. We can decide how much water is on our map. I kind of want a lot of water. I think it'll be really interesting to look at, so we'll go with abundant. We can decide how generous our trading partners are going to be. So right now you can see that we've got 3 allies. I think that we'll say that it's going to be typical. So we'll probably have 2 allies and someone who's hostile towards us. Then we can decide the type of map that we have, so coastal, river, or oasis. We'll stick with coastal. We can decide whether or not we have a freshwater spring, which can provide a bit of defense as well as fresh water. I think we'll keep that on. And then we can decide if we are invaded or not. And that's because this game indeed has combat. I think I want to have the combat mechanic present, so I don't want it to be none. So we'll say sporadic because I don't want to be continually invaded. And now if I hit generate, you're going to notice that this image right here changes, as well as all of our allies and trading partners. And what you can see is that we have our capital, we've got 1 city that's a foreigner to us, 1 ally, and 1 hostile city. You can also see that our objectives and ratings are changing. So if you're not satisfied with any of this, you can regenerate it. And there's one reason you might want to, and that is your resources. So one of the things I didn't realize right off the bat the first time I played is that not every map is going to have every resource. So if having stone, one of the basic materials, is really important to you, you're going to want to generate until you find a map that has it. Now you can tell where your city start would be based on these little squares right here. So that's the other thing you might want to think about. If you want your city to be on the coast, you might want to generate a couple more times. So I know that I want to have stone, and I also know that I want my city to be on the coast. So I'm going to generate until I find the perfect map. And I think that I've found it. A couple of reasons that I like this. First of all, we're on the coast. I see all of our resources right here, but I also think that I could defend this map fairly easily. I can see that our freshwater source is right here, and I'm going to need to build walls around my city. I think I could build from the freshwater source to the coast, and then right here, and completely enclose my city and protect it from invaders. And then we've also generated our ratings and objectives: prosperity of 30, culture of 40, might of 30, prestige of 20, and a population of 3,000. That is going to be our goal on this map. Now for this video, I don't know that we're going to beat the entire game, but we'll be in a trajectory to do so, and we'll get most of the way there. And here we are on our map. And before we unpause and start playing, I want to point out a couple of things. First and foremost, look at this art style. It's hand-drawn and it's beautiful. But I point this out because it's going to change the way that I play the game a little bit. Because this is hand-drawn, it's not fully 3D. So when you rotate the map, it's kind of like SimCity in that you get a different isometric view of your community. So just keep that in mind. I think it really fits this game well. Secondly, no matter what map you generate, you're going to start out with these two buildings right here. A fortress, which is kind of a basic security building, has a real basic military in it and trains some units. And we have a trading post. And right now, the trading post is the lifeblood of our community. You can see that we are importing a bunch of stuff already. We're importing maize, which is our basic food. We're importing timber, which is our basic building material. And we're importing clay and stone, two other basic building materials. So we are going to want to produce all of this stuff locally if we can as soon as possible. But in the meantime, we're going to spend down our axe monies, and we currently only have 9,500, so we're going to want to stop that as soon as we can. And then on the left over here, we have our win conditions. So I pointed those out on the map screen. We have prosperity, culture, might, prestige, and population goals. So we're going to want to keep an eye on those as we are playing, because if we want to win, we've got to meet all those goals. Let's begin by stabilizing our food supply by building a few farms. Now, the first thing we've got to do is take a look at our fertility. So we'll go into our information overlays and turn on our farming fertility. And it's good that we did that because west of town is very infertile, but east of town looks really, really good. So this is where we're going to want to build all of our farms. So let's build some roads in that general direction. And now for our farms, we'll need to begin by building a farmer's hut. This is where the farmer will live and they're able to farm the area directly surrounding the farmer's hut. Now, it's going to be really important that we maintain close proximity to our trading post. And that's because that's where all of our construction materials are currently located. And if we get too far away, you'll notice that that building that's currently glowing green, which means that it's close enough to reach this building, will fall off. And if we get over here, that farmer's hut will never get constructed. So we're going to build our first building right here. There are ways to extend that range, but we're not anywhere near that right now. So now that we have our farmer's hut planned out, we can plan out our fields. So we'll go underneath farming and food and select a maize field. Now we could build the other ones, but maize is the staple of the diet. It's grown alongside beans and squash. And as I drag this onto the map, you'll notice that that farmer's hut is glowing green and it says 1 of 32. This means two things. Number one, it means that in the current location that I'm hovering over, if I were to build the field right here, it'll work and it'll be assigned to that farmer's field. It also means that I could build another 31 of these because you can assign up to 32 fields to a farmer's hut. Now, I want to be a little bit strategic about this though, because eventually, if I irrigate this farmer's field, I'll produce twice as much food. And you can only irrigate within 3 tiles of a canal. If I do something like this, this is 6 units square. I'd be able to irrigate all of this. Also, if I do something like this, 3 units wide, and then I cross the street and I do 3 more units, this is also able to be irrigated. And in fact, let's just build our canal right away. And we'll mirror this by building another farmer's hut right here and more maize fields. Now, as I'm hovering over this, you'll notice that it says that this will produce 7.2 maize per year, which is enough to support a population of 360. So if these were not irrigated, if I were to build 10 of these, I could support that population of 3,000. But because I'm irrigating this, I should be able to build half as many and still support that population. Now I'm going to push the normal time button so we can start to build these things. And I want to start to think about the other things that we need to support this population. So I want to be able to get our own lumber. So I'm going to go underneath industry and materials and build a sawyer. The sawyer actually chops down timber and replants it as well. So as we hover over the forest, you'll see that it's glowing green. Again, this is the logistics thing. And the sawyer is able to travel 18 tiles, which is why so many trees are glowing green. But again, transporting materials is going to be really important. So I'm going to draw this road first, And then we'll place our Sawyer off the road. And from here, they should be able to reach that trading post. So now we have 2 of our production facilities in place, but we have to finish off our supply chain for the food. And for that, we're going to want to build a granary and a small market. The granary is going to be the place where we store all of our excess material, and the small market is where we're going to be able to sell all of our wares to our citizens. So I'm going to build the small market right downtown, and we'll build our granary. So we've taken care of our maize and our timber. Let's take care of our clay and our stone. Now for that, we'll go underneath industry and material again, and our clay pit is where we get clay from. Now the clay pit must be placed close to the water, but there's something really important to know about this building. If we click on this little help button right here, we can see that the ambiance of this is terrible. So we don't want to place this next to people's homes if we can avoid it. So I'm going to place this a little bit further away from our city. And this is close enough to the water so it should still work. And then I'll add a new road right to this facility. And then finally, I'm going to place a stone quarry so that we are able to get our own stone. So I need to take a look at our overlays one more time, and I want to take a look at our deposits. And the yellow area right here is a stone deposit. So if we place our quarry nearby, we'll be able to extract stone. So let's place our stone quarry right about here. And I've got my fingers crossed that we'll actually be able to reach this facility from our trading post. We'll have to find out. In the meantime, I've noticed that our granary has been constructed. So we need to pop inside of it and actually make some adjustments to what it can store. So obviously we want to store maize, and we can store up to 60 units of goods in here, but there's a reason why you might not want to crank that all the way to 60. So right now it's set to accept. So maize can be stored here for delivery to other venues. If we change this to get, the maize will be dropped off here for delivery to other venues. And if we have it set to balance, it'll do both. So interestingly, with the current location of this, balance might not be the worst idea because we're relatively close to the farms and the trading post and the market. So trying to maintain that balance will make sure that things are moving around. So I think I'll probably set it to balanced right now. And thankfully, it looks like both our clay pit and our stone quarry have been built, but they are both in distress. And we can figure out why by clicking on this. And it looks like the reason why they're having a problem is they don't have any staff. And that makes sense. We've built no homes. So I'm going to build some common homes. And these are the kinds of homes that are used for basically every building outside of the farms. So I can drag these along here and create a block of homes if I want to. And I'll place 6 of those right there. And I'll also build roads to these homes. And those were constructed fairly quickly, and now you can see that those buildings are looking happy because they now have workers. So now I want to stop all this importing madness. So I'm going to stop importing maize, and for now, I'm going to say that we're not trading any of it. And for our clay and our stone, I'm going to say the exact same thing. And that's because I don't feel like I'm in a place where we're producing enough of those materials to begin exporting, but I think that we're producing enough that we don't need to import it anymore. Because at this point, it's just kind of time that's going to be our limiting factor. So let's beef up our production by adding additional Sawyers and additional clay pits. So I'm going to add another Sawyer right by our existing Sawyer. I'll add another clay pit by our clay pit. And for this one, I've got to actually be a little bit away from our existing one. Otherwise, I think the walls would collapse. So I'll go 1 unit away. And then for our stone quarry, same deal. I'll go just a little ways away. Now, one thing I keep seeing is that turkeys are walking by. And that makes me think that for food supply, we might actually want to think about capturing some of those turkeys. So I'm going to build a turkey hutch. This requires a little bit of wood and a little bit of clay, and we're producing that. So this is going to be easy for us to build. And I think I should be able to build that right about here and collect those turkeys. Now, interestingly, it looks like this second quarry that we placed is just a little bit too far away to actually get built. And this was the concern I was thinking about earlier with the farms. So I'm going to get rid of this for now and not worry about it. Next, I want to start thinking about defenses. So we are going to need to completely encapsulate our entire area with stockades. So these are walls that are wooden that can completely surround our city. And I think that we are going to need to build these sooner rather than later so that we aren't invaded. So I'm going to begin right here and drag this all the way along here. And then we need to build a gate. And I want to figure out if this is the best location. I'm not sure that it is. I don't love that this road is really curvy, so I'm going to straighten this out. And now I want to add a gate into the city and some stockade towers. These will actually be assigned workers, and they will protect our city from invaders. Now, in addition, I'm going to build a hunter's lodge out here. The hunter's lodge is interesting because in their downtime, they will hunt meat, wild game, they will go after it. But when we're being invaded, they will actually provide defenses. So they're a very interesting asset. Interestingly, they also don't need access to a road. You can see that even way out here, we have access to the granary and the trading post. So I'll place that right about out here. And our one limitation is going to be that there's no way to get materials out there. So now I want to start thinking about transport of goods and a porter's yard. The porter yard stores goods for local use. So if we want to expand out like we are here, we have to have this porter yard. And we're likely going to have a number of them. So I'm going to place this right about here because it still has access to all of our main buildings. And if I get too far away, they start to drop off and we wouldn't be able to get materials to the porter yard. So I'll place that right here. And much like our granary, we do have to establish the logistics for this building, and we can store everything from foodstuffs to raw materials, whatever we want. But I know that for this one, I want to store building materials that we can build things out here. So for our hunter's lodge, for instance, I can see that we need timber and we need clay. So I want to make sure that we are storing those goods in this facility so that we can transport them over to our hunter's lodge. So I'm going to add clay and timber. And then I need to figure out the correct setting here. And I don't want to store things here. I want to transport them from here. So rather than being accepts, I'll say it's getting. So we will go and get the materials and then we will drop them off on the building site. Now I also want to take a look at the wall to see what we need here. And it's timber. This is a wooden wall with a wooden gate. So that should do the trick for us. I'm going to actually crank the amount that we're getting over here. And I love that you can see that these materials are actually populating the building just by looking at it visually. Oh no, our granary just caught fire. We need a well dipper so they can put out the fire. We never built a well dipper. I totally forgot about it. So the well dipper is found underneath health and safety, and they provide basic water supplies. So fire protection, of course I forgot it, as well as basic water. I'm gonna place this relatively close to our population center, and then hopefully this gets built soon so our granary doesn't burn down. Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness it got saved. I feel relieved at this point. Now, thankfully, we're starting to see some construction taking place out here, and that is all thanks to our porter yard. Our hunter's lodge is now built, and it's just looking for recruits at this point in time. So now there are two things that I want to do. Number one, we've got to take a look at our turkey hutch to see if we have any turkeys here. We do. We've actually got 4 turkeys and a farmer. So we want to make sure that we have a place to store the meat. So I want to take a look at our granary, and we'll store meat in our granary. And I'll set this to balanced once again, and I'll crank this up to 24. The other thing I want to focus on are our clay pits over here. So the clay pits aren't just about getting clay. You can also make pottery using the clay, and that pottery can be traded away and make some money. So I'm going to build a couple of kilns. So the kilns just take that clay and turn it into pottery. And I want to take a look at the ambiance of the kiln before we place it. And it looks like it's poor, so not the worst, but we don't want to place it right next to our population. So I'm going to place that right about there, and we'll build some roads going up to it. And we've kind of got a mess of roads over here, and we can start to clean some of this stuff up. So I'm going to do it. Clean lines. I love it so much. So one thing I am noticing is that we are not constructing our wall. And again, I think we're just too far away. So I'm going to build one more porter yard, and I'll build that out here. And as we were waiting for that to be constructed, I see that the enemies are on the march. Scouts report that an invading army is heading towards our city. They should arrive in 1 month from the west. So it's really good that we're trying to construct this wall. Unfortunately, we're also not going to be done in time. Now, I've been noticing that this is not being constructed, and it's because we're missing a material. Yeah, we never got stone over here, and that's because I never added stone to this porter yard. So I will say that we're getting this now, and we'll bring that right over here. In the meantime, I'm going to deploy some troops. So I'll rally the troops, and I'll place them right about here. So I need to select the captains. Oh, the invading army is already here. Amazing. We'll rally the captains and confirm the task, and they should come and hang out right here waiting for the troops to come. In the meantime, I'm also going to start to add timber to this porter yard. Now, interestingly, even though I've rallied the troops, I don't see the army. So I guess I'll just let that be. And oh my goodness, it looks like the reason why we weren't fighting is I missed them sneaking around me. So we lost a porter, a vagrant, 2 common child, and a noble child. Not great. Not great. And indeed, there they are. So I guess I'll just resume this and I'll disband our troops. That did not help us. In the meantime, let's set up our pottery supply chain, and we can see that production is currently underway, but nothing's happening with this pottery short of us selling it back to ourselves. So now I want to actually start trading. So for that, I'm going to go underneath my Commerce Advisor view. And if I select pottery, I can see how much we are currently producing and how much we are expecting to produce this year and how much we are actually consuming. And I think that we can't actually afford to get rid of any right now. And we probably want to start producing some more if we can. So I'm going to build a couple more of our kilns. And now once those are constructed, we should be able to export the 8 pottery that we currently have listed under exports. So that'll make us some money so that we have a bit more prosperity. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that our maize in storage is declining. And that to me means that our population has grown to a point that we can't actually support it. So I want to expand out this way now and construct some more farm fields. So we are going to need to build that road. And now we need to build a porter. And for this, I think I'm going to build the porter yard right about here. And this should help us reach this area out here. And now we need to store some goods here. And I want to make sure that we have the building materials needed for a farm. So I'm going to build the farmer's hut, or at least plan it out. And it's interesting. It looks like our farms here are ruins. And that's because we didn't build a mason yard. So the mason actually constructs and repairs buildings. So we are going to build this first. And I want to build this right next to our porter. And that's not the only problem that we have. It looks like squalor is rampant as well. We have waste all over the place. So we'll need to build a sweeper, all sorts of issues. And the sweeper's found underneath health and safety. And this is an interesting one in that the ambiance is terrible. So we want to make sure that this is nowhere near our citizens. So I'm going to place this one way over here by our clay pits. Now, our mason yard is going to help us in the future, but it's not going to help us much with these ruins. So I'm going to need to eliminate these. And now we can replace them. And while we're waiting for those to get built, I want to lay out our farms over here as well. And while we were waiting for our construction to complete, I can see that there are more enemies on the march. And it looks like the wall is mostly complete, but there is a spot right here where it never got built. And that's because there's a road there. So I want to clean up these roads and then we'll build that one spot of wall. And as soon as they are done removing that road, I will add this one piece of stockade. But unfortunately, it looks like the enemy is already here and I did not call my army. So I'm going to do that right away. And I will rally the troops right here. And hopefully they get here in time. And they're running. That's perfect. Thankfully, we do have some troops that are protecting us from right here, though they are trying to make their way around. Got him. Got him. Got him. And oh my goodness, we suffered no casualties, but I've never seen this happen. It looks like a portion of our wall has broken down, and it's the ruins of our stockade tower. So I'm not sure if that's because we are out of range of our mason yard, but I suspect that that is the case because you can see that we're not reaching that far over. So I'm going to build another mason yard over here, and then we'll have to reconstruct this portion of our fence. And there we are completely enclosed, at least on this side. So we should be in a good spot. We can disband our troops now, and hopefully we won't have to deal with being attacked again. Next, I want to focus on culture a little bit. You can see that we've got a bit of prosperity. We've got a population that's a third of where it needs to be, and we're definitely very mighty, but we have no culture at all. So I want to build an alcove. This will be a space where drummers and flutists can perform, and that should provide a bit of culture, make this a nicer place to live. And I'm going to place this right next to where people are currently living. And I'm thinking that we've got to move these sawyers soon. We don't need these to be right next to where people live. So I'm going to relocate these, and I'll use the relocate structures function. I'll select both of these, and we'll just drag these up the road. So one of the reasons I wanted to move this is not just because I wanted to build the alcove. I also want to build our first temple. So religion should also help us progress in our culture score. So all of the temples have a different purpose. And if you take a look, you can start to see these. And I'm going to butcher any of these names, so I'm nervous to do so. This is Zip Toktik, god of earth, who can transmute the blood of the slain into wealth and rich harvests. We could have more wealth and rich harvests if we give tributes, if we build this tower. So I think that we'll give it a shot. You can see this side has awful symmetry, but don't worry about that. Symmetry can be improved. And I will build that right here. And I'll make this more symmetrical by relocating this structure. Now, I've made a terrible mistake. This is not symmetrical because I put this in the wrong location. So I'm going to delete the thing that I just built so I can move it back one tile to make it more symmetrical. Okay, so we're finally good here, and we could leave this as is, but I've got a plan. I want to get rid of all of these trees back here. We're going to urbanize this area. And then I want to add one farmer's hut back here. And I'm doing that because I want to add a whole bunch of fruit trees along here for the sake of symmetry. And then I want to make this area look nicer by upgrading the roads to stone roads. That is looking good. And I imagine if we take a look at this, the symmetry is now divine. So we did a great job, and the neighborhood ambiance is fabulous. This place is perfect. So now I wonder if it would make sense to relocate our common homes near our new upscale neighborhood. And that may have seemed arbitrary, but these buildings can be upgraded. Now, the one thing that it's missing right now is access to a sweeper. I placed one of those way over here, and the reach is just not quite far enough. So I'll add that road, and that still won't be good enough, but I can relocate this building. And now it is in a perfect spot. You can see it can serve most everything. And while I was concerned about ambiance, the enemies are on the march, and they're coming to our city from the northwest. So we should be safe. That should be behind our wall, but still we will rally our troops and we'll place them right at the gate. And we'll resume, and we should be just fine. Oh no, that's the northwest, and we never built a wall there. So we are not just fine. In fact, I think that this is one of the few places that we're not protected. I'm going to build a new wall. That's what we're going to do. We'll build a new wall right here. So I'm going to use this little bit of a hill to our advantage. We'll build our stockade gate right here, and then I'll build the stockade right along the side of it. And my hope is that in the next month, we can have this complete. I don't know if that's being overly optimistic or not. And funny enough, the enemy has arrived, and they've arrived from the same location they came from last time. So I was just being paranoid. We're going to be just fine. We lost a spearman, but this wall is amazing. And I'm not leaving this area until we rebuild that wall. We can disband our troops. Once again, successful. We've held off the opposing forces. And honestly, maybe it was for the best. We were able to construct this wall out here, and I think this was the only vulnerability that we had. Now, I keep seeing a warning that disease is becoming a problem and that we need to hire an herbalist. So let's build an herbalist. And the herbalist provides treatment for common illnesses using herbs and spices gathered from my gardens. We don't have any gardens yet, so we'll have to construct those, and we'll build an herbalist right about here. Now, the gardens are found underneath beauty and diversion, and we've got two different kinds of gardens that we can build. We have a small garden and a large garden, and we're going to need a gardener as well to take care of the garden. So I'm going to begin by building a large garden. We'll get our money's worth. If we're going to build this thing, we're going to build a nice one. And I think I'll build that relatively close to our homes. And we'll use this as a rationale to build a couple more of these as well. And since we're producing stone now, and have been the entire time, I'm going to upgrade our roads to be stone roads. Now, the gardener works a lot like the farmer, and they can tend a certain number of plots. So I'm going to place them right about here. And this is a reason why we probably want to build more gardens in the area. And all of those stone roads really make the city seem nicer. I've got to finish it off. Now, this was quite the expensive construction project, and it's probably a rationale for building another one of our quarries. So we'll build that as well. Now, at this point, our city's really heading in a great direction, but I want to start meeting some of our goals, or at least trending towards them. So we're going to build some more common homes and boost up our population. And I know I've essentially replaced the ones that I moved. And then I want to build another farm. Now, at this point, the city's in a pretty good place, but I think it could be even better. What I want to do is really beef up our military and build a whole bunch of government and education buildings. I think that'll help with our prosperity and our culture, while also helping us defend the city. So for the military buildings, it's really the barracks that we need. Right now, we're seeing intermittent complaints that our military is so small that other cities aren't afraid of us. So I'm going to build that out here, and this will help train some of our elite fighting forces. I also want to build another hunter's lodge. And now I want to build a whole bunch of these civic and education buildings. So I'm going to start out with the collector. And this is a building that actually gathers tax revenues from local homes and businesses. So this will directly help our prosperity. But this is going to require a whole bunch of stone. And I can't help but think that maybe we should have some sort of a stone mining operation over here. And now let's build the other civic and education buildings as well. We'll start out with the Telepakali. This is a building that provides civic education and martial arts training to young boys. I think we could probably fit this one behind the granary. We have a library as well. This houses scrolls, poetry, and illuminations to edify and instruct your nobility. And then finally, we have our Kalamakak. This is basically a university. This is an interesting one because it requires symmetry. I'm going to rotate this around, and what I'm thinking is we will carve right into the hillside right here. And while we were waiting for our buildings to finish construction, we got a notification that the enemies are on the march and they're going to be here in about a month. So hopefully with all of these new military facilities that we've built, we've really beefed things up. I can't help but wonder though if we should have more guard towers here. So I'm going to build a couple of those as well. And I probably just went a little excessive. We'll see if we can even get these built in time. I'm feeling hopeful. And we at least got 2 more built, but there's no one manning them. So that's a little alarming. I also forgot to rally the troops. That's not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. So there we go. Our troops have been rallied and they are currently fighting our gates. Oh no, they've made their way straight into the city. Oh, this is terrible. This is terrible. Oh my goodness. They're right in the heart of the city, fighting everybody. Not good at all. Thankfully, though, It looks like we put them down. We lost an archer, and a spearman, a porter, and an archer were incapacitated, but it could have been a lot worse. I've had it happen where they break through your city and they just start completely destroying it. So they'll burn down your barracks and a bunch of other crazy stuff. So thankfully we repelled them, and all we lost was our main gate. All in all, that was a fairly simple repair, so I think that we're in a pretty good spot. Now, interestingly, our collector's not being built, and there's usually a reason for it, and you can find it when you click on the building, and it looks like it's because we don't have enough stone. So this is a worry that I had. We've been using a lot of stone in our mason yard, producing different artwork, and I just think that we currently have a deficit. Now, I thought about importing it. In fact, I went in here and I decided to export more pottery and start to export timber, but I just think that importing is not the right choice. So what I'm going to do instead is add a couple more quarries. And I'm thinking that right along the side of the hill right here, we could definitely add 1 or 2 more. So I'm going to carve out right here. And with those, we've effectively doubled our stone output. So hopefully that helps us get our collector's office built, because I really want to start collecting taxes. It's going to get our budget in check. And rather than just breaking even, we'll start to make some money. And finally, our final building has been completed, our collector, which is good because we are steadily losing money. But now if we click in here, we can see that we are collecting some taxes, which puts us in the green for the first time. Our balance is positive. Thank goodness. So with that, I think it's helpful to take a look at our aspects. And this is really what we were looking at the start of the game, what we need to accomplish to beat this game. And what you can see is now that we're collecting taxes, our prosperity is above 30. Our culture is a little low. If we got that up there, then we would be right on track. Our might is way higher than it needs to be. Our prestige is way higher, and our population is about half of what it needs to be. But we are well on our way to going where we need to go if we want to win this. And honestly, I've had a ton of fun playing this game. It is an absolutely gorgeous game, a unique art style, a new perspective on city builders, one unlike any that I've played before. And honestly, there's a ton more to do in this game. We are just scratching the surface, but I think that we are going to leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. I've had a lot of fun bringing it to you. I want to give a huge shout out to the developers, Perspective Games and Bellwood Studios, for sponsoring this video, along with Paradox Arc, the brand new publisher. If you want to check this game out for yourself, there is a link to the Steam page in the video description and in the pinned comment below. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.